All right, folks. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is day 2 of the Indigenous Innovations, the Access of Food, Energy, Water Systems workshop.
The vision of the Indigenous Food, Energy, Water Security, and Sovereignty is to develop a workforce and graduate students that will be able to have skills in food, energy, and water, but also be able to have an intercultural awareness where they're able to work with Indigenous communities and developing communities in a culturally sensitive way, and to be able to develop and design technologies to meet food, water, and energy insecurities. Another thing that the students learned in this immersion is that the Navajo people have their own way of problem solving. And this is the problem solving concept based on the Diné fundamental philosophy. As Avery Denny was stating earlier, this is the process, and Diné College really teaches their own students to do science in the Navajo way of this problem solving. So we also enforce that in their immersion experience. But as at one teaching, one of the community members said that they need their own data to communicate to the world from their own perspectives, the challenges that they face, and create their own solutions. So we try to emphasize that in training our students.
Our trips included becoming familiar with some of the wastewater treatment facilities that you see here on offshore keys in Belize. And the image you see here also highlights one of our I guess, favorite community partners with the Seaweed Farming Cooperative, and shows the cultivation of seaweed. And this is Mr. Godfrey here showing us what that looks like on an offshore key, and then how those are then tested by some of our NRT fellows here, Daniel, Michelle, and Estenia, in the lab back at USF for various heavy metals and other kinds of contaminants. And these are also being sourced for personal care products and also for consumption locally in Placencia.
Here is how the program came to play in the collaboration with the Pinole-Ville Pomo Nation. We have been working with the PPN Housing Department, Environmental Department, and Education Department. The PPN has secured several grants for low-income housing, and we have worked together on designing these prototype houses. In the process, we learn about co-design, sustainability, and many technologies for sustainable living. Our joint project grew from conversations we had literally on the ground, and on that same day when Leona Williams, the PPN chairperson, shared the history of the land and her vision to build a living culture center which would house a cultural practice as well as repatriated artifact, I suggested that we do an international design competition and test how designer architects can use technology to learn about a land and a culture which they are not familiar with. So we have actually this picture from the prototype house, and now on the Pinole-Ville Pomo Nation Reservation. This is a bit about the process of co-design and the academic results from it on co-design. This is a master program that looked at the comfort, the indoor air quality and comfort level within the houses.
I think for Native people, just the trusting institutions is sometimes difficult. And so with that being said, I had to put, those thoughts aside and do what was best in my elected official capacity. I agreed to go to the campus, and we met with some students and staff, and it wasn't at all what I was thinking. It was more they wanted to know how to approach Native people in a respectful manner, and they just wanted to know some cultural norms. And so it was a good meeting, good first meeting. And so from that point, we did some collaboration on these culturally inspired homes.
I struggle with that too, Elena, so I think it's a great question. I'm from the Global South also, but recognizing I'm coming, especially when returning to the Caribbean or even to communities here in Tampa, I'm coming from a position of power, having a PhD in engineering. I think working with anthropologists is an interesting balance because they study these dynamics. And so it's interesting to see the two fields where it's sort of you want to do a pilot just to show this new approach to more sustainable ways of getting water or treating wastewater. And then having the anthropologists who don't necessarily want to do a pilot or be part of putting in something that could have repercussions. And so I think that in itself has been an interesting process for our students. And I think we all sort of recognize and reflect on our position in terms of working with communities. And a lot of it stems down to finding community partners who are also interested in this type of approach, you know, this idea of piloting, reflecting, did it work, did it not work, and realizing that maybe we have some access to resources in terms of financial and so on that we could bring to the table, but really building on ideas that community have been trying to or working on doing to begin with.
I could jump in the response to the co-design process. I always recommend that the process be designed with the community members. And so Angela James talked about it, that when we first met with her, she thought it was a little strange asking so many questions about how to run our workshop. But she came to appreciate that she had agency in being able to define the boundaries and the activities that we took, you know, that we worked with her on.